Under Orlando's blue skies, peace looks eternal until you see what's buried in its shadow. A live stream turned into a blood-soaked ambush. A quiet storage unit concealed the body of a woman murdered. An elderly grandfather, crushed beneath the wheels of his own Mercedes. And a police officer, executed in daylight by the very man she sought to arrest. Each scene, framed by palm trees and sunlight, tells a story where beauty meets brutality. Decades behind bars may follow, but the dead never return. And this is Inside Orlando's Most Notorious Black Killers, Shocking Murders, and True Crime Cases. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. William McClish. Under the glare of downtown streetlights, 2 Orlando police officers stood outside their patrol car, unaware a camera had already started rolling. At 12:58 a.m., on the 25th of September 2021, 27-year-old William McClish positioned his phone against a trash can on Washington Street and pressed go live on Facebook. The lens captured a silent frame of 2 uniformed officers, Michael Zambito and Stephen Hurt, before McClish stepped into view carrying a brick. Moments later, the live stream exploded into chaos. Police say McClish had declared his intent just minutes earlier in another recording, "I'm gonna kill him on live." What followed was an unprovoked ambush. McClish struck Officer Hurt in the head with a brick, fracturing his skull, then turned on Zambito, biting his bicep and finger before clawing at his eyes in a violent struggle. Witnesses described screams, shouts for backup, and the sound of the radio hitting the pavement as McClish tore it from the officer's vest to stop him from calling for help. He even tried to grab a service weapon before 4 other officers arrived to subdue him. Both officers were hospitalized. Hurt required weeks of recovery. Zambito later said the attack could have ended in murder if help came seconds later. The Orlando Police Department's Major Crimes Unit quickly obtained McClish's phone, recovering both the live footage and the earlier recording where he announced his plan. Detectives confirmed that he had arranged the phone's placement to ensure the entire assault was broadcast live. Investigators also discovered he had bragged in jail about trying to take an officer's gun. McClish's record stunned even veteran prosecutors, nearly 50 arrests in 8 years, including violent assaults and weapons charges. He had never served more than a few months in county jail. "He slipped through every crack in the system," said one officer. Initially offered a plea deal of just 5 years in prison by the previous state attorney, McClish rejected it, insisting the evidence had been tampered with. Representing himself at trial in March 2024, his defense lasted less than 15 minutes. The jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict in under an hour. On the 2nd of April 2024, Judge Kevin Weiss sentenced McClish to life imprisonment for attempted first-degree murder of a law enforcement officer, aggravated battery with great bodily harm, and resisting an officer with violence. Orlando Police Chief Orlando Roland called the attack a chilling reminder of what unchecked violence looks like when the system fails. The Fraternal Order of Police demanded reforms to prevent habitual offenders from cycling back onto the streets. A former victim, Carla Rodriguez, who had been assaulted by McClish months before, said, "If he had stayed in jail, those officers wouldn't have almost died." From this case come sharp warnings: early intervention in violent patterns saves lives, digital platforms can amplify brutality instead of preventing it, and lax sentencing for repeat offenders puts entire communities at risk. Even in an age of live streams and viral fame, justice begins when the camera stops rolling. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2. Cory Hill. In the soft dawn light of a Florida morning, what began as a routine day unraveled into one of the state's most chilling domestic violence cases. Cory Hill, 51, was once seen as a man of faith, a familiar face in his Winter Springs community. But behind the image was a history of violence and deceit. On the 11th of November 2023, Hill was last seen with his estranged wife, 37-year-old Shakira Rucker, a mother of 4. Surveillance footage showed the pair shopping and dining together in Davenport before heading to Hill's rented storage unit in Apopka early the next morning. At 6:39 a.m., cameras captured them entering the facility. 7 minutes later, Rucker's phone sent a message to her family, "On my way home." It was the last anyone heard from her. Then, Hill was seen leaving alone less than 20 minutes after they arrived. Investigators believe Rucker was shot inside the storage unit. Forensic technicians later recovered 4 9mm shell casings, one lodged in her hair and blood spatter on the walls. Hill had tried to hide the body behind 2 car tires before locking the unit and driving away. Just hours later, Hill arrived at the Kissimmee home of his ex-girlfriend, Angel Milligan. Armed with the same gun, he fired into the residence, breaking through a kitchen window while shouting her name. Milligan and her children escaped uninjured, but the attack revealed a disturbing pattern. Both Rucker and Milligan had recently discovered Hill's double life, each believing she was his only partner. Hill was arrested the following day for the attempted murders in Kissimmee. For nearly a week, Rucker's whereabouts remained a mystery until November 18, when an employee at the storage facility noticed a red liquid seeping into an adjacent unit. Believing it to be spoiled meat, the manager opened Hill's locker and found Rucker's decomposing body. A 911 call brought detectives to the scene, confirming a homicide. The Orange County Sheriff's Office connected the storage unit casings to those recovered from Milligan's home. Hill's car appeared on security cameras at both locations. Prosecutors described the murder as cold, calculated, and premeditated, announcing their intent to seek the death penalty. Hill, already a convicted killer from a 1992 Virginia case, remained silent as he was indicted on 9 charges, including first-degree murder, multiple counts of attempted murder, and firearm possession as a felon. In court, Hill appeared expressionless, his eyes fixed on the floor as the indictment was read. Shakira's family filled the courtroom, holding photographs of her smiling with her children. Outside the courthouse, the family launched the For My Sister Foundation to help victims of domestic violence. They urged others to speak before it's too late. From this case come hard lessons: silence is not safe, abusers often hide behind charm and faith, and every red flag ignored risks another tragedy. Recognizing manipulation early and seeking help can be the difference between survival and loss. Even behind smiles and sermons, some monsters prey before they kill. Number 3. Savon Tyler and Lakevia Pringle. Under the golden dusk of a Florida evening, an argument over photographs turned into a tragedy broadcast for the world to see. On the 5th of November 2024, 34-year-old photographer Lauren Ashley Martin drove to Sanford, Florida, to confront 35-year-old Savon Shantae Tyler over pictures that had ignited days of online hostility. As Martin streamed live on Facebook, Tyler's girlfriend, 31-year-old Lakevia Devonna Pringle, began her own live stream, her phone steady, her voice urging the confrontation forward. Detectives later said the tension had been brewing for days: threats, taunts, and live-streamed challenges. Tyler, anticipating Martin's arrival, retrieved a 9mm handgun and hid it inside a utility box near her home. When Martin arrived, the two met in the street under flickering lights, trading insults before the fight turned physical. As fists flew, Pringle's camera caught every second. Her voice echoed, "Beat that hoe's ass." When Martin wrested a small bat from Tyler's hand, Tyler ran to the utility box, pulled out the gun, and fired twice. The first bullet struck Martin's arm, the second pierced her abdomen. The livestream went dark, but the sounds of 2 gunshots carried through the feed. Police officers arrived minutes later to find Martin lying in the road, bleeding heavily. She was rushed to a local hospital, where she died from her injuries. On scene, investigators recovered the handgun, a child's toy bat, and the victim's phone, still recording. Tyler remained at the scene, admitting she shot Martin. She told detectives she feared for her life, then changed her story, claiming she thought Martin had a weapon and that she was protecting her children inside. Detectives found no evidence supporting self-defense. The Sanford Police Department later stated that surveillance footage, witness testimony, and the livestream itself contradicted every version of her claim. Pringle refused to cooperate. Investigators issued a warrant, and she surrendered 3 days later. Both women were indicted by a Seminole County grand jury for first-degree premeditated murder. Prosecutors announced they would treat the livestream as an aggravating factor that could lead to life imprisonment or the death penalty. In court, Tyler appeared composed, dressed in a gray jumpsuit, her gaze distant as the charges were read. Pringle, seated beside her, avoided eye contact with the gallery. Neither woman spoke. Both remain held without bond as the case moves toward trial. Sanford Police Chief Cecil Smith called the case a chilling reminder that one impulsive act can destroy multiple lives. The victim's aunt, Jessica Burks, described the killing as senseless and cruel, pleading for people to stop sharing the live stream, saying, "Her children shouldn't have to see their mother die on video." From this tragedy arise urgent warnings: never resolve personal conflicts through violence, walk away when anger turns public, and remember that a camera can make cruelty permanent. Digital validation is never worth a human life. Even in an age of endless connection, one moment of rage can turn the lens of fame into a witness to ruin. Number 4. Javonne White and Jasmine Munro. It happened in broad daylight, an elderly man leaving a pharmacy, a routine errand that ended in unimaginable violence. On the 30th of January 2022, 78-year-old Yukon Cummings walked out of a CVS pharmacy on Silver Star Road in Orlando, carrying his prescriptions. He never made it home. Moments later, prosecutors say two young suspects, 20-year-old Javonne White and 26-year-old Jasmine Munro, confronted him in an attempted carjacking that turned deadly. Cummings, a retired New York hospital security officer and grandfather of 10, was shot, run over, and left to die beside his Mercedes SUV. Surveillance footage pieced together the tragedy. White had been loitering near the pharmacy's entrance before following Cummings to the parking lot. As Cummings approached his car, White drew an AR-15 style pistol and opened fire. Investigators later found 5 shell casings typical of that weapon scattered on the asphalt. Witnesses recalled hearing multiple shots, then seeing the elderly man collapse. But the violence didn't end there. Munro climbed into the driver's seat while White held the keys. They reversed the vehicle over Cummings' body, then accelerated forward, crushing him again as they fled. One witness described the moment: "It was like they were driving over a speed bump." The medical examiner confirmed that Cummings died from both gunshot wounds and massive blunt force trauma. Detectives launched a full-scale investigation that same afternoon. Witnesses and security cameras led them to the suspects. Video showed White and Munro dining at a Domino's Pizza minutes before the killing, and later abandoning Cummings' Mercedes in Daytona Beach. The SUV was found unlocked, apparently left in hopes it would be stolen. By February 3, both were arrested. Munro initially claimed she saw Cummings point a gun at White before the shooting, but later admitted she knew White carried the AR-15. White told investigators it was self-defense, a claim police rejected after reviewing the footage and witness accounts. Detectives concluded he was the aggressor. Both were charged with first-degree murder and armed carjacking. In court, Judge Wayne Wooten denied bond for both. White's attorneys have since filed a motion for a stand-your-ground defense hearing, arguing his actions were legally justified. Prosecutors insist the evidence proves cold-blooded murder. As of early 2024, the case remains in pretrial status, with hearings repeatedly postponed. Orange County Sheriff John Mina called the suspects heartless murderers, vowing justice for the Cummings family. "You ripped this man from his loved ones for a car," he said. Cummings' son Carl described the grief as unbearable. "He didn't deserve that. It's a car, man. It makes you afraid for every elderly person who just wants to live their life." This tragedy underscores painful truths: never confront armed robbers, stay alert even in familiar public places, and remember, violence often begins with opportunity and impulse. Prevention starts long before the crime itself. For the family of Yukon Cummings, justice will come slowly, but their father's dignity will not be forgotten. Number 5. Donovan L. Faison. Under the stillness of a November night in Sanford, Florida, a young mother's promise of new life ended in a single, silenced gunshot. 18-year-old Kaylin Fiengo had gone to meet her former boyfriend, 21-year-old Donovan L. Faison, at Coastline Park on the 11th of November 2022. She was 3 months pregnant, carrying what should have been a symbol of hope. Instead, it became the reason for her death. Investigators would later say the confrontation was planned, the motive clear: Kaylin had refused to end her pregnancy despite Faison's relentless pressure. When Kaylin told him she was expecting, Faison's response was a single word: abortion. In a string of text messages obtained by police, Faison expressed anger and panic, fearing exposure to another woman he was living with, but when Kaylin stood firm in her decision to keep the baby, his messages turned darker. To a friend, he wrote, "On my brother's grave, I'm gonna crop her out." Prosecutors later told jurors, "He said it. Then he did it." On that November night, Faison convinced Kaylin to meet. Surveillance footage traced her car entering the park. Minutes later, a single gunshot echoed. When police found her, she was slumped in the driver's seat with a wound to the head. A bullet casing lay nearby, and beside it, an ultrasound photo of her unborn child. The Sanford Police Department and Seminole County Sheriff's Office led the investigation. Detectives spent months piecing together phone records and digital evidence, building a case of premeditation. The damning text message, combined with location data, placed Faison at the scene. After 10 months, he was arrested in August 2023. Sanford Police Chief Cecil Smith called the investigation exhaustive, adding, "Every shred of evidence told us this wasn't a crime of passion, it was a decision." In October 2025, a Seminole County jury deliberated for just 2 hours before convicting Faison of first-degree murder, killing an unborn child, and burglary with a firearm. Prosecutors described the shooting as cold, calculated, execution style. During the penalty phase, the jury voted 1-1-1 to recommend the death penalty, exceeding Florida's new 8-4 threshold law. As Faison sat motionless at the defense table, his face blank, Kaylin's family addressed the court. Her mother, Sarah Schweikert, said, "The grief sits in my chest like a weight that never goes away." Her father, Ricky, promised that Kaylin's son, just a year old, would grow up knowing how deeply she was loved. Chief Smith called her death a tragedy that should never have happened, urging others to recognize warning signs of control and anger in relationships. The case reignited debate over Florida's death penalty reform, one of the most lenient thresholds in the nation for capital sentencing. From this case come hard lessons: manipulation masked as love can turn fatal, digital threats are not idle words, and silence in the face of danger can cost 2 lives at once. In the end, a text message became a confession, and a promise of life ended where trust met violence. Number 6. Jean Robert Macean. In the early hours of a quiet Sunday in Daytona Beach, the sound of motorcycles from Bike Week had long faded when a crime of pure brutality shattered the calm. Terry Altman, 48, and his wife, Brenda, 55, were walking their bicycles home after a night of festivities on the 6th of March 2022. Surveillance cameras showed a man, later identified as 32-year-old Jean Robert Macean, walking past them on North Wild Olive Road. Within minutes, both were dead, attacked, stabbed, and left bleeding on the sidewalk in what police would call one of the most vicious murders the city had ever seen. 2 passers-by found their bodies around 1:57 a.m. Brenda's clothing was disheveled, their bikes lay nearby, and blood pooled across the pavement. Both had their throats slashed and multiple stab wounds. Investigators believed the victims had been dragged into a yard after the attack. Daytona Beach Police Chief Jakari Young, a veteran officer, called the scene one of the most brutal murders I've ever seen. Detectives worked urgently, scouring hours of surveillance footage. They discovered images of a man matching Macean's description near the scene, his white pants soaked with what appeared to be blood. Within 24 hours, a restaurant worker at Johnny Rockets provided the breakthrough. She recognized the man in a police photo and handed over a receipt he'd signed the day before the murders, paying with a credit card and tipping just 58 cents. That small receipt tied him to the killings. Police tracked Macean to Orlando and arrested him on the 10th of March 2022. During questioning, he confessed to murdering Terry and Brenda Altman. Prosecutors described the killings as random and senseless. Macean had arrived in Daytona Beach by bus the day before and left immediately after. A grand jury indicted him on 2 counts of first-degree murder, and prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty, but the legal process slowed when questions arose about his mental competency. Psychiatrists initially declared Macean unfit for trial, citing hallucinations and possible brain trauma. Months later, doctors concluded he was malingering, faking symptoms to avoid punishment. After multiple hearings, he was deemed competent to face justice. On the 7th of May 2025, Macean pleaded no contest to both murders. Judge Elizabeth Blackburn sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His attorneys argued he was intellectually disabled, invoking the Supreme Court precedent Atkins v. Virginia, 2002, which prohibits executing individuals with intellectual disabilities. In court, Brenda's daughter, Sarah Turner, called the killer a monster and said the outcome meant at least one thing: he'll never hurt anyone else. The random killings sparked national outrage and political debate after Florida's governor blamed federal immigration policy, revealing Macean was a Haitian national living in the U.S. illegally. This case left behind sobering lessons: never underestimate random violence, trust your instincts when danger feels near, and remember that evil often arrives without warning. Some crimes don't end lives, they end innocence itself. Number 7. Vincent Lee Howard Jr. It began as a phone call, angry voices, broken trust, and a threat that would turn into one of Orlando's most violent shooting sprees. 40-year-old Vincent Lee Howard Jr., a married man and father of a young child, found himself consumed by rage after learning his former girlfriend had a new partner. On January 3, police say that jealousy became a weapon. During a heated three-way call with his ex and her boyfriend, Howard reportedly shouted that he would come over and shoot up the house. 10 minutes later, he made good on the threat. Driving his wife's black Mercedes-Benz, Howard arrived outside the boyfriend's home. The victim was standing in the driveway when he saw the car roll to a stop. A moment later, Howard's head appeared from the sunroof, gun in hand. Then, in an eruption of violence, the street filled with the sound of gunfire. Investigators later counted 94 shell casings scattered across the pavement and lawns, a staggering number even for experienced detectives. Howard had fired nearly 100 rounds, targeting the man who had replaced him. The victim dove for cover behind a bush, then into his bathroom, trying to survive the storm of bullets tearing through walls, windows, and parked cars. Against all odds, he was struck only once in the left buttock and managed to drive himself to the hospital. Nearby residents described chaos. One woman was injured trying to flee as bullets ripped through homes and shattered glass. It sounded like a war zone, a neighbor told reporters. Multiple houses bore holes from the barrage. Police arrived within minutes and spoke to Howard's ex-girlfriend, who told officers he had been angry and jealous ever since she ended their relationship. Detectives quickly traced the vehicle's registration to Howard's wife, leading them to his Orlando address. When officers arrived, he wasn't home, but within hours, they found him parked in a nearby car with 2 other individuals. He was taken into custody without incident. Howard was booked into the Orange County Jail, charged with attempted first-degree premeditated murder, shooting from a vehicle, discharging a firearm into a building, and being a felon in possession of a weapon and ammunition. Officials noted his history as a violent career criminal. When questioned, Howard immediately invoked his right to an attorney. Public Defender Robert Wesley confirmed that his office represented Howard but declined comment, citing the ongoing case. As of the latest available information, Howard remained in custody awaiting trial. The incident drew quiet alarm in Orlando, a reminder of how jealousy and access to firearms can turn a domestic dispute into near-mass carnage. Law enforcement stressed that this level of violence over a relationship dispute is something no community should ever face. From this case arise vital lessons. Emotional volatility mixed with firearms often leads to irreversible harm. Digital or verbal threats are precursors, not empty words, and awareness of escalating behavior can save lives before law enforcement must intervene. Rage can load a gun, but only restraint can keep a life from ending. Number 8. Lashawn, Triplett, and Johnny Wesley. It started with a chance encounter that reignited old tensions and ended in a killing so calculated it shocked even veteran investigators. In March 2022, 39-year-old Melvin Ray Wilcox, a devoted father of 2, vanished after visiting the home of a friend he had known for years, 42-year-old Johnny Wesley. Wilcox had recently discovered that Wesley was in a relationship with his ex-girlfriend, 43-year-old Lashawn Triplett, the mother of his teenage son. That discovery, police later said, was the spark that led to murder. On March 13, Wilcox ran into Triplett and Wesley together at the Central Florida Fair in Orlando. Witnesses recalled an argument breaking out between the 2 men. 2 days later, just after 2 a.m., Wilcox drove to Wesley's house in Pine Hills. Surveillance footage captured him walking inside, but he was never seen leaving alive. Over the next few hours, the footage told a grim story. Lights in the house flickered off, then Wilcox's Honda Civic was backed up to the front door. Several people struggled to start the car with jumper cables. Later, the car was driven away. An hour after that, Wesley appeared on foot, loading 2 large trash bags into his own car and leaving again. Detectives believe Wilcox was shot inside the house and his body hidden in the vehicle. When Wilcox's mother, Tawana Burke, reported him missing on March 16, she contacted Wesley directly. He claimed Wilcox had stopped by, they argued, and then Wilcox drove off after his battery died. Burke wasn't convinced, and 2 days later, her fears were confirmed. On the night of March 18, Orlando police discovered Wilcox's body inside the trunk of his Honda Civic, parked in a Walgreens parking lot near Pine Hills Road. He had been shot 3 times, once in the head, twice near the neck and shoulder. Detectives quickly linked the crime scene back to Wesley's home. A search warrant revealed blood traces, bullet holes, and a 9mm casing inside the house. The forensic evidence, combined with the security footage, led to the arrests of both Wesley and Triplett on March 19. They were charged with first-degree murder with a firearm and held without bond at the Orange County Jail. Both suspects denied involvement. Triplett, represented by a public defender, remained largely silent. Wesley's defense argued that Wilcox's death stemmed from a heated argument, not premeditation. However, prosecutors described the killing as deliberate, motivated by betrayal and jealousy. The investigation left a community grieving. Friends described Wilcox as an amazing son, father, and friend. His mother organized a funeral service at Grace Bible Church, requesting prayers for her grandson, who lost both parents to the same tragedy, one to murder, the other to prison. The case carries haunting reminders. Confrontations fueled by jealousy can turn deadly. Surveillance is often the silent witness that speaks for victims, and betrayal, once weaponized, can destroy entire families. Melvin Wilcox should have turned 40 that week. Instead, his name became another entry in Florida's growing archive of senseless loss. Number 9. Markeith Loyd. Beneath the Florida sun, one man's spiral of rage would claim multiple lives and test the limits of justice itself. Markeith Loyd, born in 1975, was a 41-year-old Orlando man whose name became synonymous with violence after a string of killings in 2016 and 2017. His story began with an act of vengeance and ended with a manhunt that shook an entire state. On the night of the 13th of December 2016, Loyd went to the home of his pregnant ex-girlfriend, 24-year-old Sadie Dixon. She was 3 months pregnant and already the mother of 2 children. When she opened her door, Loyd pulled a .40 caliber pistol and fired 8 times. Dixon's brother, Ronald Stewart, tried to protect her and was shot but survived. Loyd fled into the night, armed and dangerous, leaving behind the lifeless body of the woman he once claimed to love. For nearly a month, Loyd stayed on the run. Then, on the 9th of January 2017, while shopping at a Walmart on John Young Parkway, Yeltened, Deborah Clayton, an off-duty Orlando police officer, was alerted that the fugitive was inside. Witnesses said Loyd, wearing a bulletproof vest labeled security, tried to escape. As Clayton pursued him across the parking lot, he opened fire, hitting her in the hip. She fell, fired back, but Loyd circled around and fired again, the final shot striking her neck as she lay defenseless. During the subsequent manhunt, Orange County Deputy Norman Lewis was killed in a motorcycle crash while responding to assist, adding another name to the toll. The city erupted in grief and anger. The U.S. Marshals added Loyd to their top 15 most wanted list, and a $125,000 reward was announced. For 9 tense days, police followed hundreds of tips. On the 17th of January 2017, they captured him in an abandoned house. Loyd emerged in body armor, carrying 2 guns, one with a 100-round drum magazine. When he resisted arrest, officers subdued him after a struggle that left him with severe facial injuries and the loss of his left eye. They handcuffed him with Lieutenant Clayton's own cuffs, a symbolic act of justice. In court, Loyd's behavior was erratic. He cursed at judges, claimed conspiracies, and insisted on representing himself. Jurors convicted him of Dixon's murder, sentencing him to life. In 2022, a second jury found him guilty of killing Lieutenant Clayton and unanimously recommended death. Judge Letitia Marquez upheld that recommendation, calling the act cold, calculated, and merciless. In 2023, the Florida Supreme Court affirmed both convictions and the death sentence, rejecting all appeals. Law enforcement called the verdict justice long overdue. Orlando Police Chief John Mina stated, "He executed Lieutenant Clayton while she lay defenseless. This is why the death penalty exists." From this tragedy arise lasting lessons. Jealousy breeds destruction, violence ensures loss for all, and revenge consumes its host before anyone else. In the end, justice may prevail, but it never restores what the bullet has already taken away. Each case, each name, is a reminder that beneath the palm trees and neon lights lies a truth darker than fiction. And if these stories shook you, don't just watch, stay aware, hit subscribe, tap that bell icon, and join us as we uncover the next chapter of Florida's most haunting true crime cases. Because here on Justice Reversed, the truth isn't over when the verdict drops, it's only just beginning.